Hello and welcome to another episode of Spiritually Incorrect, our annual Halloween episode. I'm your host, Seth Hart. Joined with me is Jonathan Lyonhart and Dr. Shane J. Wood, a recurring guest. At this point, we might as well just call you a co-host at this point. You're on here so often.
Well, and between him and his brother, like, it's just constant. Like, his family must just be like, "What is going on? We're not out of the woods
Wood
yet."
Theological
everywhere.
Podcast hosted by the Non-Woods.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there we gosh. So, thank you for coming back on again.
Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for having me again. Recurring is always a fearful word. I don't know why, but I guess when it's attached to guest, that's okay. But
Oh, like
Recurring.
this cyclical, almost like
Yeah.
The
Sisyphus,
eternal
like pushing
return.
the boulder up the hill over and over again.
Exactly.
No,
That's what this podcast
that's what
is
me
like.
and Seth's relationship does feel like these days. It's like we banter, then we go, and then we do it again next week, and then we just keep. We're
I
just
went
like
really not
rehashing the
personal,
same
and
stuff.
you just went straight for the, let's just go straight for the heart there.
Love it.
So on this episode, we decided we're going to do a little bit different thing. We decided we're going to try a little bit of a round table. Knowing Shane Wood, knowing Jonathan, and myself, we often have some interesting experiences that we might term supernatural.
Yeah.
And I thought this might be a great opportunity to bring on a guest and just kind of share a little bit of the more spooky encounters that we've had in our own life.
That's exciting.
Yeah, because usually we do a really intense Halloween episode. Usually we had on an exorcist, we did an interview with a former witch, we had on a Satanist, and I think this time we just decided
person
that
as well.
there's nothing more terrifying than the contents of Seth's mind. So we're just gonna sort of talk to him and see what comes out. Right?
The contents of my mind and the contents of your life, Jonathan, together
There we go.
are the spookiest things imaginable.
I feel like I'm like a marriage counselor or a peer mediator or something in this situation.
Just can you work out our lives for us? You want to talk about something?
Thank you.
Something that would require supernatural intervention.
That is a Halloween episode. That's frightening. That's terrifying to think about.
What's more frightening than marriage? I mean, was it Nelson Mandela who was like in prison for decades, like horrible conditions, gets out, and then gets divorced in like under a year? Like,
are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he like survived prison, this political fight, but then he gets back out. The woman he's been married to for decades, who stood by him, he's like, nope, I can't handle marriage for like 6 months, divorce.
That's crazy. My
prison
marriage
was
saved
managed.
me. My
marriage
marriage saved me.
People used to think I was a homeless man wandering on Ozark Christian campus.
I still think
like,
that.
They still think that. But like my wife, like total game changer too.
Oh,
yeah.
My 18 years being here at Ozark, I've been stopped. I can't even count how many times by security because I looked like, quote, a ruffian.
So I'm joined today by two homeless ruffians.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I live it, love it proudly.
Oh, gosh.
A ruffian sandwich.
I'll go ahead and get us started off. A couple years ago, I shared this story. And it was something that if you look back in the old archives, you can hear this story. It's about one time I was riding on a plane. And it was after what was it? It was after like one of the worst travel experiences of my life. So many cancellations. And they finally get me on this short flight from New York to Toronto. And I downloaded quite a few podcasts just to, listen. And there's one podcast that's just sort of like Strange Tales. I was listening to this, and they started talking about this weird mountain off in Spain. And I was like, okay, I just randomly downloaded it and was listening to it. And apparently this mountain, it has this effect where people will go up into it and completely get lost. And some people are never found. And a few people who have been found, they've like lost their mind. And they've been like, the mountain called to me. They would just disappear from their family one day and get called to this mountain. And long story short, I'm listening to this and I'm like, that's kind of creepy. And as soon as the episode ended, I had the flight map in front of me. It's one of those flights that had the little TV in front of you. It's one of the nice flights. It glitched. It sort of like, did the little sort of classic, like you see in movies or whatever. And the flight map had changed to where I looked at it and it looked like the flight had like done like a direct 90-degree turn off the corner. And I looked and I was like, using my finger to see where it landed. It landed directly over a random spot in Spain. And then it
No.
looked like it came back. Like it had been teleported there and then teleported back. So I took a photo of it with my phone, just kind of laughing. It's like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
When I landed, I looked up the location of this mountain. It was directly over where this mountain was.
Huh.
And I
Do you still have that picture?
I still have the picture.
Oh,
I have proof.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have proof of this. Unfortunately, I don't think I can upload it. But I landed there and I said, that might be one of the... Either that is the creepiest coincidence of my entire life, or that is the weirdest supernatural event of my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a little fun story that I had shared a couple years ago.
But I think what's interesting about a lot of these stories is what you just said there right at the end. We don't know what to do with them. Coincidence.
What do you do with that? Go to Spain?
Well, we usually put the word coincidence in there because we don't want to have another C word lob towards us, the word crazy. So like we have to find a way to make sense of it by pretending that maybe it was just random. But the whenever you get into like statistics and probability about some of this stuff, you start to get to a point where you're like, what's more absurd? That I keep chalking things up to coincidence whenever statistically it's improbable, or I actually just, embrace the statistics.
On the way over here, speaking of coincidence, I was literally listening to an audiobook where there was a scientist who was chastising certain other scientists who do the exact same thing, where there will be, they'll do meta-study analyses of certain phenomenon, and that'll be like a 1 in a million chance that it was by chance. And you'll still get scientists who are going, we haven't ruled out chance.
Sure.
And I suppose that's the absurdity of the human mind.
Sure.
Well, I mean, wouldn't they say it's the opposite, though? Like, improbable stuff happens every day. Like,
That's
our
right.
birth, like the fact that you're here,
Exactly.
you're the one sperm that made it, right? Like, it's incredibly... But I guess your point is how, like, you could use that to explain away anything, right?
Everything.
Even if you have a vision of God appearing before you, you can say, well, that was a hallucination. And then some other thing. So like what's the range of this is the probabilities that are enough to convince you? Like, I don't have no idea.
Yeah. Well, and I had a family member. I recently had a family member that passed away, and to protect everybody, I'm going to leave out names and might even distort a few, but a family member of mine that just recently passed away like 2 weeks ago. And it actually was pretty sudden, kind of shocked a lot of us. At the funeral, I'm talking to another person connected to the family. And he tells me, he's like, no, I'm not mystical. He's like, but he's like, I knew when I got the phone call, I knew that this family member had passed. And I was kind of like this kind of really sudden, unexpected thing. And he was like, well, he's like, I'm just, I'm not weird or anything. He's like, but 3 days before, he goes, I had this dream. He said, and I'm in this vivid white room, and there's all these little like white beings around me. And every time I looked at them, they would turn their face, they would cover their face. He said, and they all kind of got behind me and were kind of ushering me towards this door. He said, I opened the door and it went into a hallway, and there's this massive glass in front of me. And he said, whenever I looked out there, all I could see were the vast galaxies moving. He said, and it was like, he goes, at one point I reached out and I touched the glass, but it was almost like I could go through it. And it scared me. So I pulled my hand back, and he said, and all of a sudden I heard the voice of the now deceased family member behind him. He said, the family member touched my back and said, hey, buddy, which was it was this family member's way of greeting all of us. And he said, I kind of looked back and the family member said, do you want to go out there with me? And he goes, no, that looks terrifying. And she goes, okay, well, maybe we'll do that sometime soon. and I like looked at him. I said, well, my dear friend, I said, you may not think you're mystical, but I don't think that was just coincidental. But again, he's wrestling with this incredibly unique intersection of moments. Why was it that family member? Why 3 days before? Why the unexpected death? Why did he remember it? Why? Like, for me, all of those at a certain point, yes, you can still say it was a coincidence, especially if that makes you feel more comfortable. I think I'm more curious, though, by the fact of why is it that we're more comfortable with coincidences of improbabilities than we are starting to just ask the question, but what if it wasn't a coincidence? What does that push us towards? And what are we afraid of moving toward if the answer to that question was it wasn't a coincidence?
Yeah.
Well,
Carl Jung, the great psychologist, the great student of and opponent of Sigmund Freud,
Mm-hmm.
he had this idea. I don't know if we've talked about this, Shane, of synchronicities. Have you heard of this?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think we've talked about it.
He talks about how in spirituality, when two events or multiple events line up in such a way that there's a higher meaning that's discernible. So, I mean, if I see like lines in a curvatures, they don't mean anything to me unless they happen to line up in a way that forms a letter or a word.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, it's not a coincidence of curving lines anymore. It has a higher level meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be kind of like, it's like I say, God, give me a sign. And I look up, and then in front of me is a stop sign that says stop. And I'm like, okay, better stop what I'm doing,
Sure.
That would be a sort of silly synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe one of the reasons, I'll tell you my own story. I had a funny story about that in a second. I think one of the reasons we do avoid it is maybe the idea of this higher level meaning communicating to us is a little terrifying.
Yeah.
That we don't want to go across the glass, that we don't want to, that there is like these two things lining up, and it's easier to say coincidence than I just got a message.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Go ahead, John.
So I just wanted to delay whatever story you're about to tell. I wonder. So, I mean, if you're trying to prove the spiritual worldview, then these events they have to carry a lot of weight. And, that constant questioning of them is tiring and difficult and frustrating, right?
Mm.
But if you already have that worldview and you're not trying to make these carry the burden of proof, you're just like, hey, I have a religious worldview and these things happen, and I can use that spiritual worldview to make sense of these events, then in that case, like, anytime, I'm not even sure coincidences are considered natural. Like, we already grant that there's this thing called coincidence and that it's a natural phenomenon. But the spiritual worldview says all is spiritual. So what we call coincidences might already be instances of this sort of higher synchronicity. And it's just so ubiquitous, so everywhere that we've labeled it chance. But it's actually the structure of being itself, so fundamental that you don't even notice it because it's everywhere, like fish in water, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, any connection where things coincide is an actual connection. And it doesn't have to be God sticking his finger into time and space to interrupt it and be like, now I'm showing you a sign here. It can just be God's natural synchronicity is lining up. In the same way that, like, when I see a beautiful sunset, I don't think God's beauty has, like, interrupted just to give me that sunset. But I feel like I've encountered God through the sunset because God is beauty. And so wherever you see beauty in the world, God is there. What if it's like that for these synchronicities and coincidences?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have had a profound impact. Like, the story I was going to tell actually kind of does correspond to that. But thank you for interrupting anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I
was thinking about earlier this week.
Shush, you had
and
I was thinking
this
about
is really good coffee. All right, go ahead. You're going to actually get mad now.
Yes, I am.
Let
Let me talk. Jeez. I was thinking about these synchronicities when I was first reading about them, and I wasn't really taking them seriously as just one of like a million ideas that I'd heard. And I was like looking up Carl Jung, like I had it like something on his phone pulled up, and I was reading a few of his books simultaneously. And then later that night, I'm on an app called Discord, which I think, Jonathan, you know about this. Shane, do you know what this is? It's a video game app. It's where, multiple people can get on and you all sort of voice chat with one another, but people use it for everything.
Okay.
So I was there one night and I was working, and I was on Discord with a good buddy of mine. He was working on something else. It's just a sort of like, it's a way to communicate whenever, back and forth, and when you're not in the same room. And we weren't talking, we were both working on our own thing. And I pulled out my phone, opened it up, and it was still on that page of Carl Jung, and it said Synchronicities. And I just thought in my head, man, it'd be really cool to experience a synchronicity. Like I feel like that would actually like be kind of a neat experience. I feel like I would need that in my life right now. Right then on the other end, my buddy goes, Carl Jung would approve of that. And I just thought, yeah, he's right, he would. And then I said, wait a second, I didn't say that out loud. And I asked him, I said, why did you say that? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I've just been doing a lot of research on Carl Jung lately. And I said, yes, but why did you, that's interesting, but why did you say Carl Jung would approve of that? And he goes, I don't know, I just felt the need to say that. And I was like, did I just have a synchronicity about synchronicities? It's a meta level. And I was like,
yeah,
what?
No, I do think I do think that if we're gonna, like, you know, keep the Jungian movement going, to me there's an interesting intersection with some of this either anxiety or obsession over these synchronicities. And I think that what is intersecting is at least two components, if not more. Number one, proximity with what we cannot see. That's part of the underlying either obsession, or I would even say, fear. Why do we deny all these coincidences? Well, there's some of the proximity of what we cannot see that we don't want to actually admit exists. But I think that where it intensifies is whenever we start to discern some movement toward, so you have proximity. But what happens if it's not just that we're like in proximity to what we cannot see? What happens if there's actually movement toward us from what we cannot see? And then the question becomes, is it evil or good? And all of this, I think, is what causes us to try to come up with multiple different categories of either explaining away or linking together what it is that we're experiencing as these synchronicities, or frankly, even just some of these, like, you know, paranormal things that we don't know what to do with, that we punt to either coincidence or my mind's playing tricks on me. The problem is whenever you get like discernible evidence that something did happen, you know, like you actually have on video, like a book flying across the room with no one touching it.
Then you're kind of like, one of those videos?
Well, I don't, but I've seen one. Multiple stories. I actually have a significant story with a person I was working with about 10 years ago that involved books flying off their shelf, which was a interesting thing to help them process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it's proximity and movement toward.
John,
was that the journey of God that just got thrown? That's what I want to know.
I would never throw the journey. It's a pamphlet of some sort. So,
was there actually a moment like that for you, Shane? Like, was there like, were you like always super open to this, or was there something like you that kind of like with me with synchronicities that was like, okay, I need to take this seriously now?
Yeah, there were, you know, as a kid, trying to process, frankly, the world around me, I had moments like this, but even to this day, I don't know. I don't know if I was experiencing it more purely as a kid or if I was more imaginative. You know, so I remember some of these sound silly, but they become increasingly more difficult for me to process. But like, I remember being like 4 years old, 5 years old, and being waking up in the morning and thinking the night before, like, I can't remember what I prayed for, but it was like, Lord, you know, something, something, something. And if that's true, then I want to wake up and look at the clock at like 8:03. And I remember once, like, it was that, you know, that next morning I woke up, and because I thought I heard something, like it was, turned out it was my mom coming home because she had ran to the store real quick and came home. So I like went to the living room. I'm like looking around, trying to figure out where everybody's at. And all of a sudden I look out the window, see my mom coming home, and I'm like, shoo. And I sat down on the couch, looked at the VCR, and it was 8:03. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot I prayed that. I had moments like that. I actually remember, and again, some of this, is it synchronicity? Is it coincidence? Is it just me being discerning? Is it like a internal clock? But I remember being a referee whenever I was like for soccer, for whenever I was like maybe 9th grade for little kids. And before the games, I would be like, I think this is going to be the score, and I think these are the people that are going to score. And then when they did, truthfully, it would freak me out to the point where I started praying against that. I was like, God, I don't want to know. I was like, forget it. Never mind. I don't want to know. I don't know what I was afraid of, but I was afraid. Then I remember in college, it started to escalate. where it was almost this like that tender move towards me. I think early on I didn't know how to handle because love was difficult for me as a kid. But it was the non-tender move towards me that started to bother me in college. So I remember once in college, I would have been my sophomore, junior year here at Ozark. I was preaching at a church about two hours away, Harrisonville, Missouri. And we were going through doctrine. I was like, I was going to just like teach this church, like, what do we believe as Christians? We'd done one on Trinity, and this week I was preaching, that week in particular, I was preaching on Satan. So I had a whole sermon on Satan, which part of it was remarkably like, we just don't have a lot, and especially Old Testament on Satan. Like it's very few and far between. Job. And then,
Satan.
I was going to say, like, and I mean, it's pretty vague. And that was kind of the sermon. So I'm at my childhood home in the basement preaching. I'm by myself. I'm going over my sermon. And I'm preaching. And as I'm preaching, all of a sudden, I mean, clear as day, as I'm sitting here in this office, clear as day, I heard my mom yell down the stairs, as she did always when I was a kid, like, "Hey, Shane." And I stopped and went, "Yeah." And it was like silence. And I was like, "Oh man, come on. I'm in the middle of a sermon." And then I was waiting. So I yelled again. I was like, "Yeah." Waited. And I was like, "Oh, for the love of God." Like, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm in college, but she's treating me like I'm a high schooler. She'd call my name and then I'd have to go up and investigate, because she wasn't going to say it more than once. So I go up the stairs, I go through, and I'm like, "Yeah," I'm yelling through the house. And then I realized no one's there. So I sat down, I sat down on the couch, and I just like cold chills. And I was like, did I just hear my name yelled down the stairs while I was rehearsing a sermon on Satan?
There you go.
So those are some of the small ones that then where I really started to open up to the investigation of a lot of this stuff was actually after I graduated. And it wasn't so much, it was me reflecting on past stories that had happened to me, but it was it was pastoral. It was, people in the church that I was serving would have things happening in their home and not know who to turn to. And then I'm sitting there going, I'm a graduate of Bible college, and we've never talked about this at all. Yeah. No one ever talked about it whenever I was here. And so I remember watching a documentary on some paranormal thing happening in someone's home. And this was the tipping point where they were being terrorized in their home by an unseen entity. And basically they had called a Baptist pastor where they went to church. So a Protestant, then they went to a Catholic priest. Both of them basically were like, it's all in your head. And they were still being terrorized. So then they went to this shaman who came in and said, "Hey, I want you to leave the house. I'm going to go in and do a ritual. What I want you to do is to take this wine, take this food, bury it next to this tree as an offering." And they do. And the shaman comes out and he goes, "Okay, everything is clean. It's clear out of the house." And he goes, "You have 1 month." And they were like, "For what?" And he goes, then it will come back. Your offering bought 1 month, and then it will come back with a force." And I remember watching that going, first of all, my thought was, what? Like, you just struck a deal? My second thought was, but no Christians were there to help them. Then my thought was, and I wouldn't know what to do. And it was at that point where I was like, that's unacceptable. I need to be prepared to help people no matter what the situation they're in. Even if it is quote unquote in their head, I should be able to be prepared to help not explain it away, but to help them disentangle why it is that it's locked in their head. But I need to be prepared for everything. And if I actually believe that there is a God that I cannot see, that does want to move toward us and interact with us, I have no understanding why I would deny that there was a more malevolent side of this equation that is also moving towards us and wanting to engage us. So that for me shifted everything. And whenever you study this stuff, maybe it is synchronicity, but it's like it becomes a magnet where even though I don't this is literally the first podcast I've ever done on this, but I've studied this for 20 something years now. And the amount of people that just come out of the woodwork and say, I don't know who to turn to. I just thought I would come to you over the last 20 years is unreal.
We are all about outing theologians for their weird views. But
really, Shane, you believe in
it,
that?
I'm surprised one of the things
Shamanic
you didn't
deals?
think. My immediate thought was once a month, this guy is doing some brilliant financial planning. Like he has to come back every month. That's brilliant. But it's
That's
interesting
the
you're talking
deal.
about
It's like,
those.
oh, I'll leave
That's the
forever.
deal.
No, can you make it 1 month and come back? I'll cut you in. You
Yeah.
get more wine.
Yeah. Well, I could come back in 6 months. Nope, 1 month's good.
That's good. That's good.
I thought it was interesting you talked about these little things that might not mean anything, but then they start to build. And it almost reminded me of, like when I was trying to figure out if my wife liked me or not before we were dating, right? Like
You're still trying to
little
figure
things.
that out, right?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah. And it's interesting because one day Seth called me and was literally like, I think my sister likes you. And then he made a case. He had like a 10-point case of things he'd observed. And any one of those things on their own would have been dismissible. But they created this cumulative case. And then in hindsight, I could go back and look and be like, oh, yeah, she said that one thing that might mean nothing. But, and really the point of this is I'm a stud and, obviously. But I think what it means is things that might mean nothing, genuinely might mean nothing, when they assemble and build to a broader whole, you can then look back and be like, maybe that did mean something.
Sure.
And so like when now that I know she likes me, we can look back and be like, yeah, that was me giving you a signal. You should have gone for it there. You're an idiot. And I'm like, dang it. And I think that sort of romantic equation, I think it's true on the spiritual level as well, especially if we're talking about the dark side or the other side courting us or reaching out to us, like things that might mean nothing. Then you build and there's more evidence and then it creates this cumulative case. And then you can look back and be like, well, it didn't mean nothing. If that was it on its own, yeah, it would be silly. And you might be right to dismiss me for thinking too much of those moments. But now that I've had a deeper encounter, I then interpret those moments in light of that. And I mean, that's a valid way of proceeding in the world. That's how we proceed with all things. That's, so.
Yeah,
no, you're right.
And I like how we're telling, deeply meaningful spiritual stories that we've encountered, and you're telling us how you struck out on the dating field.
You only have to hit a homer once, man. So yeah, and it doesn't matter when you hit it. You can hit it when you're, 21. You can hit it when did you get married, Seth? 30. But as long as you hit it, that's all that matters.
That's crazy.
So,
to go off go ahead, Shane.
No, I was going to say, I do think you're right, though, that cumulative effect. What's interesting is that cumulative effect is also a part of the, I'm just going to use the word like demonic strategy. Ironically, I think it's a parody of the holy strategy. God's revelation of us, to us, of himself, is that cumulative effect. It is these, but how many sunsets and how many moments can you have these, in a sense, interjections of the divine that eventually make you stop and go, maybe there is something. But the demonic parody of that is, it's so consistent. I hate to even say it this way, but like when I've been working with people over the years and they're starting to tell me their story, in my mind, I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is textbook. Like there's so many consistent patterns with like infestations that, beginning with knockings, 3 knocks at the door, 3 knocks on the window, or scratchings in the wall, or maybe waking up and having a 3 scratch on their body, or, loud boots clanking up on the top, or always being woken up at 3 a.m. Like there's so many consistencies between these where you can actually discern how the demonic strategy is. We're starting out here, and once you acknowledge me, that grants me more permission to move forward. And once you acknowledge that, it grants me permission to move forward. And then I actually think that the ultimate goal of every demonic move is a disincarnate being to try to actually at least feign incarnation. I think
mockery.
That's absolutely. Well, in some sense, that's like the ultimate. It is mockery, but it still is like this innate goal.
It's like an envy, nearly. It's like, what's the one thing we have that demons don't?
Correct. Jesus envy.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jesus envy, but even think about the original, Genesis 2, the God creating this being, and then what was still not animated, he then incarnate and puts the image or breathes into this image, and it then becomes sentient. It becomes alive and moving, and this union of the non-physical and the physical and the human. And you see this consistent. I mean, even think of demonic possession. It is that. It's the demonic trying to take what is non-physical and unite it with the physical. This is the concept of golems. This is the concept of Frankenstein. This is Revelation 13 with the beast from the earth creating an image of the beast of the sea, breathing into it and animating it. The disincarnate becoming incarnate is always the goal. It's just done through devastation as opposed to life.
I've got a kind of a lengthy story, but I think it's putting some pieces together for me. This was way back whenever I was a student of yours, Shane, way back in my Ozark days.
I'm sorry.
There was a time where I was kind of wrestling with if I wanted to really go into ministry, if it was just a giant mistake, even if like this whole like taking Christianity seriously was a real thing for me. And I just remember I was hanging out with some of my old friends who weren't exactly the best influences. And he was house sitting out in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. I mean, it was a trailer in the middle. He's like, I don't want to be out there alone. You want to go out there with me? So we're out there. And I'm just sitting there. He's off in another room. And I'm sitting by myself, really just sort of wrestling with life. It's the middle of summer, you know, middle of nowhere in a field, this trailer. Thinking, and I just kind of came to the conclusion, it's like, I think I just need to withdraw from Ozark. I think I need to stop pretending that I'm anything like the other students here who are really called by God. I think I need to just give this all up. In the midst of thinking that, I heard a noise, and I was watching TV. The TV was on in the background while I'm thinking about this. I paused it, and it was this low rumbling noise. And it came in, and it started to shake. Things in this trailer started to shake. And it just, eventually, it's like violently shaking. Everything is falling over. And it just like stood over us, shaking everything. And then it moved on. And my friend came out and goes, "What the heck was that?" Not his exact words, but I'll let you put it together. And I said, "I think that was an earthquake." He's like, "But we're in Kansas." And I go, "I know." And so he literally grabs a baseball bat and starts circling around because he's supposed to be house sitting, taking care of this thing. Of course, and I'm like, "What are you doing, man? That wasn't a human." And he's just shaking like in fear. And I just remember at that point, just it dawning on me randomly, Mark Moore, earlier that year had said there was said something in his Acts class about earthquakes being a sign of God's anger and wrath. And I just remember it's like, was that for me? And I started calling around because I had friends who lived around that area. No one had felt anything.
No kidding.
But my parents, who lived about 50 miles away, I called them, and they just happened to have been up at the same time. And they said, "Oh, you heard that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they heard. I said, "I felt something." And they said, "No, like in the exact same time." They said they had heard the loudest boom they'd ever heard. And they thought like some factory had blown up.
Wow,
like,
interesting.
And they said my dog ran off and hid under the couch. And I just thought, okay, I'm not having those thoughts again. I guess I'm staying at Ozark. And that actually saved me staying at Ozark. And that has a huge impact on my life, that whole story.
I can't believe demons did that to keep you in theology. That is terrifying.
Wait a second, John. You obviously have a very theologically immature mind.
Like, these guys are smart.
Here's the demonic
they know how to play.
So 2 months later, it's 2 days before I go back to Ozark because I had decided to stay. And it's my parents' place, and it was like 3 a.m. and I'm still up. I'm like soaking up the last bits of summer as any 19-year-old kid would. And I'm like, I'm not going to go sleep. I'm going to soak up every last bit of no school. And I hear the same rumbling again at my parents' house. But this time it was smaller. And it was a lot more localized. It was like the first time it felt like it was above us. This time it felt like it was ground level. And I paused the TV. And my dog looked up and was looking in that direction. We had a row of sunrooms, like a sunroom with like a row of windows. And I pause it and I hear something. And as I hear this rumbling, our motion light turns on outside. And I can hear my outdoor dogs. They're barking, barking, barking. And it comes up, and I can tell exactly where this thing is. It's so loud. Things are shaking in the house. It stops next to our front door, starts going along the sunrooms, and I can't see anything outside because the lights are on inside, and it's pitch black outside. Stops right where I am at, and then hits the side of the house, and things are falling over. My dog ran off. And I just stood there completely shocked. And I ran upstairs and I woke up my dad. I was like, I think there's someone outside. He's like, what? They were completely passed out. Didn't affect them at all. So I'm like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
So I go up and I go to sleep, and I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to read the Bible. That'll settle me. As soon as I open the Bible, I'm on the second floor. My room's on the second floor. I start hearing someone knocking on my second floor window.
Hmm.
There's nobody out there. It's the second floor. This happens over and over until I hear someone start breaking down our front door.
No kidding.
Pushing on our front door. And that's when I bolted, woke him up. I said, get down. I start dragging my dad out of his bed. And he finally, he's outside. This time I'm shaking, terrified. He's looking around on the roof, seeing if there's nobody on the roof. The next night's the last night before summer. I stay up again to see if anything would happen. And then I start hearing footsteps inside the house and doors opening and closing.
Huh.
And there's a little chandelier. The chandelier would shake, so I was seeing it as well as hearing it.
Yeah.
And I would follow it, and nothing would be there. And I was very happy to move back to Ozark Christian College the next day.
Yes.
But it felt like a parody of what happened to me. It felt like a smaller version, sort of like ha 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 ha.
The first one was from God, and the second was a mockery of what God had done.
It felt that way.
What in tone.
Potential. Yeah.
It felt like this is a smaller, we can't do that, but we can do this, Yep.
Now, so if I was talking to somebody, I'm not doing this right now, and they brought this story to me.
Yeah.
Some of the questions I would then be asking would be, okay, so how old is this home? Do you know the history of it? Are you yourself? So that there's what I love to do in these situations is take a completely holistic view. Not always assuming it's like a demon or a devil under every rock.
Right.
Because we're just more complex than that. And frankly, the spiritual realm is more complex than that. But what we are doing right now is we're wrestling again with proximity, movement toward, and now meaning. So what is the meaning of all of these converging together in one moment? And why this moment? And why the parody? And but I would want to know also from the person, okay, so let's cover the bases. So maybe the house is brand new. I'm not going to ask you, but the house is brand new. Okay, well, the likelihood of that, unless it's on some sort of burial ground or something like that, yeah, we're probably okay with the actual structure. Although there are times where houses can. So the way I always think about all of this is permissions. If you think of the spiritual realm as permission based, and that you're constantly, by how you're living, or frankly, even the places that you're dwelling, you're granting permissions or denying permissions every moment. This is why I connect sin with the potential for demonic entry points. No, what is sin? It's a lot of things. You can define it in a lot of different manners, from that which quote unquote separates you from God, or that which unites you with death, but in this context, I would say it also is it is granting permission for something other than God to be a part of your life. And so, or another way of saying it is giving a legal right for that which is not of God to be present with you. And so in these, then what I would do is I'd go through with the person. I would say, are there any sins that you need to confess? You got to get this out. If there is, I've literally talked to people about this before, and they're like, I've got nothing. And they meant it. And the more I pushed, I was like, I think they're sincere about this. So then I start moving into other different phases, going, okay, what is your current diet and exercise? Because I believe our bodies also are in tuned and connected with are you having trouble sleeping? There are times whenever you actually can have demonic entities that disrupt sleep over a long period of time as a way of disorienting you and increasing the permission then that you grant. Which is why, I was reading, Psalm 37 or something like that not too long ago. And it's like, God grants sleep to those that he loves. And I'm like, oh man.
I knew my children waking me up was demonic. And maybe that's one of their parodies. Angels are often depicted as naked babies, so demons come as children.
Did you just call your kids demons?
I will
I
say,
wouldn't
though,
say they are demons. I would say that there's some manifestations that sometimes feel like are occurring. Sorry, go ahead, Shane.
while I don't want to step over that delightful joke, demons actually do impersonate children quite often, because that's such an easy way to get somebody to give them permission to draw closer. If they impersonate a child, who's going to tell a child to get out? Or if they hear a child crying, who's going to be scared? Well, no, they'll do that to draw. This is the angel of light
I'd be
effect.
scared.
I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
would too, but
It's
I
like,
mean,
that's straight out of The Ring, you know,
or
little
a
kid.
or a loved one
Right.
that has just
Yeah.
recently passed, or people grab a Ouija board thinking, I miss my loved one that just died, and the loved one speaks until it's not the loved one. So, but the strategy is they're trying to get you to grant them permission. Jonathan, to go back to like your connection with your wife, this is actually the same process that the Holy Spirit works through with us as well. It's constantly moving toward us, wooing us to grant deeper permission for the Holy Spirit to dwell within us. It's the same strategy. It's just the opposite side. But go ahead.
Well, and as you see, I mean, in flirtation, as you see the other person flirting and you start to participate back, their flirtation starts to amp up. But if you start to give them the cold shoulder, it's, you know, they try a few things and then it starts to back away. Sorry, keep going.
No, but what you just said there is right. Granting a denying of permission. If they open up, you think I can take a step closer. If they push back, you think they're denying permission, so you take a step back. So with all of this in place, so Seth, I'm still reflecting on your story, but I'm taking it into other scenarios. So for example, I had this person I was working with, like I said earlier, that had books flying off of their shelf. It was actually somebody that was training for ministry whenever I was talking to them. So it wasn't like some random person, and I led them through all of this stuff, and they're like, honestly, I'm doing the best I can to confess everything. I just don't know what to say. So I said, can you think of anything that you have looked at, engaged, done that is remotely demonic? And they were like, well, I mean, I have a book of Satan in my room. I said, okay. I said, do explain. You know, they were like, well, you know, because where my heart is I actually want to reach out to this particular group within the death metal scene. And they're like, they're satanic. And I bought the book so that I could read what they're reading. And I said, okay, first of all, I love your heart. I said, second of all, in order to dispel darkness, all you need to know is how to turn on the light switch. You don't need to study the darkness. And I said, when you brought this book into your room, does it coincide with any of the things happening in your room? And they were like, well, yeah. And I said, okay. So we went to the person's room. Now I'm gonna say a couple of things here that might sound weird, but hopefully it'll make sense in everything we've talked about. I had a Walmart bag, and I used it to grab the book off the shelf. The reason why I did that is because even touching something is giving it permission. But if I went to shake your hand, but then I put a glove on, you would feel repulsed, not embraced. And so denying it permission, but we still need to deal with it. And we took it down to this place, dug a hole, put it in there. We put holy water and oil on it, set it on fire. And while it was burning, we stood around it and prayed, denying permissions for this to be a part of their life. Now, what's wild about that is it's a book. It's a book. Like what really,
it's meat sacrificed to idols.
Yeah. But like, how does something like this actually unite me with that which I cannot see? Well, but every time you bring something like this into your space, you're granting it permission to be a part of your life. And so if you do that with something that has already been designated as an direct entry point, maybe even through incantations with the demonic, you can't be then surprised whenever that comes with it. So it's holistic. There's not one entry point to this conversation, but the proximity, movement towards, and the meaning will always be a part of it if it's holy or not holy.
Can I ask?
And so it's sorry.
Can I ask? Is there a place for just like I'm thinking about Paul and the messenger from Satan, the thorn in his side, that famous thing, for just people who aren't allowing passageways to still face something of the demonic?
Oh, absolutely. This is actually the story of John and Charles Wesley. The home they grew up, they have consistent, they had consistent describings of like, and whenever you hear and kind of read some of what they said, it was pretty classic infestation type signals. But the way they interpreted it was these demons understood, this demonic side understood what they were promised for, and they were doing everything they could to disrupt it. So absolutely, I think that it's also, you're in a war. That's part of this, is like, it's so hard to discern when it's the demonic moving of what their strategy is. But there is a strategy. There is a logic to it. It's just trying to discern the logic. But absolutely, somebody can be tormented that way simply because of what the demonic can see is promised in them.
I think it's interesting that you focus so much on will, because on the one hand, I don't think the demonic respects will. I think will is a good thing, and so they want to pervert it, twist it, override it, go against it, abuse against your will. But yet, I mean, there is a difference between, if you let someone into your home versus them breaking in. The fight itself is part of what weakens them. And, like, they might still try to get into your home, but they're going to have a harder time than if you opened the door.
Absolutely. Or if you sent them an invitation.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that Ozark keeps coming in this, because I have some demonic stories at Ozark as well, including a very terrifying, I have a very terrifying dream of Mark Moore basically as a demon, taking a pool cue and whacking his bald head repeatedly with it until it starts to bleed. Yeah, and it was actually a very upsetting dream, and me and a couple of guys on my dorm floor prayed after it, because I had very specifically done something the night before that I think kind of opened myself to that. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to reveal my secrets. But and so we prayed about it after that. But
join our Patreon, Ozark, $5 a month, and Jonathan will reveal his secrets.
Well, should I tell this story now, or are we still? Is this the wrong time to tell this story? Because this is kind of. I've told this story before.
It's up to you.
But so I was on a missions trip with Ozark, sophomore year. College Heights Christian Church took us. I was with Josh Quaddy. Shane's face is frozen on the screen with this beautiful smile.
Sorry.
Can you see that, Seth? Is he still here?
I'm a little. I think he might have. We had technical glitches before when we were talking about
this. This is clearly demonic.
I'm still here. I don't know.
He's still here. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm still here. We summoned him. I was on a missions trip with College Heights Christian Church. Josh Quaddy was leading it. We went to, I think it was right after Hurricane Ike in Texas, if that's right. And so we were dealing with all this debris and cleanup, and there's like people die, like there's dead bodies, and like it was a very intense context. And I remember I had a crazy dream on one night on the trip, and I was dreaming, and I suddenly woke up with the thought, and then I said someone's name out loud. I'm not going to say their name because I want to disclose their privacy. So, but I woke up and said Boris. It's not Boris, isn't their real name. I said Boris, and I just woke up from this really scary demonic dream with the name Boris, the person's name. And so I went over to that person's bed, kind of creepily, and just started praying for them. Like, I don't know what's going on. This might be nothing, but I'm just going to pray for them. And, the next day, there's like 50 people on this trip, right? I went up to Boris and I was like, hey, how you doing, man? Just to sort of see if he says anything. Yeah. And he's like, did you hear about what happened last night? And I'm like, no, what happened last night? And he's like, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm like, you got to talk about it now, because I woke up in the middle of the night with your name on my tongue and like this urge to come pray for you in the midst of the darkest. And I stood creepily over your bed. I didn't tell him this yet, but that's what I'm thinking. And
this
so
is how Jonathan and I met. I'm Boris. No, I'm teasing.
No. But anyways, so I'm just like trying to get him to tell me what happened. And he's like not wanting to talk about it because he's uncomfortable, and finally, I guess I was enough of a jerk that he told me what had happened was he had entered the room to go to bed that night, and he suddenly felt like a wall of darkness hit him and pushed him to the ground and pinned him there, where he laid for a while until someone found him and helped him get up and get into bed. And that was the same night that I woke up with his name in the midst of this sort of very demonic, scary dream, and his name was and I went and prayed over his bed. And so then I told him about my thing, and then we both were just scared, pretty scared. But then on that same trip, a few nights later, and I entered the room to go to bed as well, or it's been a while, so I'm trying to recount all the details of this. I have it written down somewhere for myself to reference, precisely because I'm going to forget the details. But I entered a room, and I felt a wall of darkness hit me, and like it was starting to push me down. It was like almost visible, and it started to push me down, and so I started praying, and I thought it seemed like a ball of light came, scared away the darkness, and hit me in the chest. And then I walked around. At that point, we were in a hotel, and I walked around all the floors of the hotel praying over all the different rooms for like an hour after that. Like I felt like spirit filled. And it was a really, on the one hand, it could be like, well, of course, your pump was primed to see a wall of darkness after you heard the story, right? Like,
Sure.
Oh, but I forgot. There's a detail to the story. Before,
Yeah,
I'm in a dorm at Ozark, Willie Third at Ozark, demonic place. And
amen.
This was the night before I was going to go on the missions trip, and I'm just sitting in my room, and I'm just sitting there, and suddenly, I just had the thought, demon. That word, demon, and then my friend walks in, not Boris, Pavlov. Let's go with Pavlov. Pavlov walks in. And he just sort of says, I feel like there's a demon in this room. And so I had that thought, and then like 3 seconds later, he just walked in and said, I feel like there's a demon in this room. And then I went on the trip. And I think the thing I'm really trying to get at here is there's something evil at Ozark. And
Come on.
Don't
do that to
happened
me.
since they hired you, Shane.
Don't do that to me. Notice I have not said the word Ozark connected to any of the stories once.
Oh, were you
need
trying
that
to
on the
not make
record.
this? Were you trying to not make this affiliated institutionally? I'm sorry. Ozark
I'm
Christian
just
College
saying,
is not.
you're telling your
Okay.
story, but
This is
I'm
my
making
story.
clear my story
No.
is not connected.
I'm not saying Ozark's evil. I'm saying I think that was
Please
a time
don't.
in a lot of people's lives that they were spiritually attuned, either to realities or just, and I think I've heard a lot of these types of stories from people.
And to kind of bring it together with what we just talked about a minute ago, at the same time, I shouldn't be totally shocked that in a place where all these people are preparing for ministry, that demonic entities would try to find a way to disrupt. I mean, what?
Yeah.
If because they're there studying for the gospel, I better go somewhere else and leave them alone. No, that's never what a battle strat. That's a terrible battle strategy. Like, no, of course you're going to do whatever you can. One of the things though that you brought up that I think is interesting is the relationship between dreams in this as well. That dreams are this fascinating combination of our subconscious wrestling with trying to make sense of reality whenever we are conscious. And yet throughout the history of the world, dreams have also been this unique thin space, this intersection between what we cannot see and what we can see in almost a physical way, but it actually isn't physical in the same way. However, for years, so Jonathan, this is where I find an interesting intersection between your story and my own. For years, it was so weird that I started documenting it and then showing it to my wife because I was like, I'm not going crazy. But I would have demonic dreams pretty consistently for like 15 years. But every time I had one, within 24 to 48 hours, somebody would come to me asking for help with something demonic. And it was so consistent because I would wake up in the middle of the night with a demonic dream. I would write it down and I would say, I just had one, show it to my wife that next morning and be like, look, I had one. And then 24 to 48 hours, I'd have an email or I'd have a person show up. And then I'd go to my wife and I'm like, and I felt like that the demonic dreams were there to intimidate me from the non-holy side. But I think that God was repurposing them as a way of saying, hey, I need you to make sure that you're prayed up and ready to go. So for me, for a while, it was a signal of you need to be prepared because I'm going to need you to step in and fight. And so it's fascinating because the demons will use dreams, or like you even said, they will use intimidation factors with darkness that's darker than dark, pinning people down, even paralysis. Now, there is also legitimate conditions that are physiological, that is like sleep paralysis. So I'm not saying demon under every rock. But I also think that at this point in the history of the world, we should look holistically at everything that could be a possible factor, discounting the non-physical at this point. I think is just irresponsible, not just for pastors, but frankly for people, like the get into quantum physics and things like that. Like to suggest that things we cannot see are not impacting what we can't see. That's just irresponsible at this point from multiple entry points.
Well, I think it's interesting because you're right. Anything could be explained away as something else if you're determined to do that. And I mean, Descartes did that with the physical world and materialism itself by saying, what if it's all a dream? Yep. All like any possible thing you believe can be explained away as some other thing if you're determined enough to do it. Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is that, I mean, we keep hearing this is your subjective thing. This is inside your head. But I think what's interesting here is this is one of the most universal experiences out there. Across almost every culture, every person you talk to has had one of the, not just one, but multiple of these weird encounters. Whether it's kids, hearing noises that aren't there, and then they're taught to dismiss those things. And whether or not that's right or wrong, I think it points to the fact that this is a universal experience that's like, it's not just in your head. And there needs to be an explanation broader than that. And that explanation doesn't have to be God exists and demon, I'm not saying that. I mean, I might believe that, but I think there needs to be a broader explanation. And I think something really interesting in anthropology is anthropologists take a lot of this stuff seriously because they just see it so constantly in every culture and place they encounter.
Space and time.
Yeah.
Like it's also cross-generational. It's not just cross-geographical. Like this is thousands of years of accounts of stuff like this. It's not new.
And it's not just dumb people. Like the spiritualist movement took off at Cambridge and Oxford and it was they called an exorcist to Cambridge, one of the Cambridge colleges, in the 2000s. Right? Like it's not just dumb people. Like there are very smart people who are taking this stuff seriously.
The more educated you are, the more likely you are to have some form of spiritual belief. That was a shocking statistic I found out not too long ago.
Not religion, but spiritual belief.
Some sort of spiritual belief. Broadly, that includes religious beliefs. Now, Shane, I know you need to leave in a few moments, and I want to respect your time. Because you got another podcast.
Wow. That's like having a second date after the date. I just feel used.
You guys know you're my first date, though, of the day. So that's great.
Is this a coincidence, though, that you have two podcasts? That's not a coincidence.
Podcast adultery. Wait, I did want to let you have the last...
Adultery.
I did want to let you have the last word, though, on, we've done a bunch of dark things. Any final, moment of hope that you might give to someone, maybe that they are in the midst of one of these experiences?
Yeah. Honestly, my initial thing is let's not forget, as we're engaging the dark, that there is also a light. That's what I loved about Jonathan's story as well. Matter of fact, I honestly, Jonathan, I'm not going to ask you, but my thought was when you were, had that thing, that dark wall press down on you and you started to pray, I wanted to ask, and when you said the name Jesus, what happened? Because that's something that's also universal with these stories. And I always tell people is oh no, use the name of Jesus like a weapon. Matter of fact, don't just pray, say his name every 2 to 3 words, because there is something palpable about the name of Jesus. And whenever we invoke names, when we say names, we're actually granting them permission to be in our presence. So speaking the name of Jesus is actually invoking in some capacity the presence of Christ, granting him permission to be there. But never forget, if you're in the midst of all of this, that there's not just a dark, there's a light that is also fighting. And the greatest thing that the enemy can do, that the darkness can do, is to get you to be afraid. Because when you're afraid, you act erratic and you grant them, frankly, greater power. Fear is an acknowledgement that you're encountering something that is greater than you, or it's outside of your capacity to fully control and understand. And that's exactly what a demonic entity would want to be approached as, that you are greater than me. However, the name above all names really does matter. And so invoking Christ's presence, it's a powerful pushback in any of those moments. And then hopefully that you can pray that God will bring people into your life that actually can surround you and help you deal with these head on.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. That's a beautiful note to end on. Remember Jesus. Like, that should be the takeaway. Remember the light. Remember Jesus. Remember that Ozark Christian College and the University of Jamestown are not officially associated with the Spiritually Incorrect podcast and do not officially endorse the existence of the demonic.
That's great. I appreciate all those caveats.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.